Hello everyone, this is Paras and I have Jake with me as well from Disruptive Advertising. Welcome to the webinar of 10 A/B tests you must try on PPC landing pages. I'm so happy for the CRO Day event. This is for the first time such a thing is happening, and I'm so glad that conversion rate optimization is sort of the community is recognizing it as a distinctive event that needs to be recognized. People in the marketing world at large have been slowly recognizing CRO. With this day, I'm sure more and more people will truly appreciate on how much CRO is important versus the traditional methods of driving more advertising to your website. So without further ado, let us start just quickly about myself. I'm founder and CEO of Visual Website Optimizer, which is a market-leading A/B testing tool. We are used by more than 3,800 customers across 90 plus countries. Personally, I'm a very big believer in bootstrapping a business, and I've bootstrapped Visual Website Optimizer in the last 5 years, grown the team to 80 people, and now we have offices in Delhi and New York. And I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship and marketing, and that is what got me interested into building Visual Website Optimizer in the first place. Like I said, I have Jake on this webinar as well. Jake, do you want to introduce yourself? Uh, I I think Jake is muted in this webinar for now. Um, Anyway, Jake, we worked with Jake, and we are currently also in a professional relationship with Jake. He runs an agency called Disruptive Advertising, and they are into both driving more traffic on the website and making sure that traffic is optimized from a conversion point of view. He's worked with a number of INC 100 companies, and I'm sure he'll share very good insights on what he learned from those companies. So the format of this specific webinar is that we'll have two parts. We are talking about 10 A/B tests that you must try on your PPC landing pages. 5 of the ideas is something that comes from my experience of working with thousands of customers who have done A/B testing, and the other 5 ideas is something that Jake will share from his experience of working with clients. And we'll take about 15-20 minutes each discussing the ideas, and rest of the 15-20 minutes we are kept for Q&A. So if you have any specific questions on your go-to webinar dashboards, you would see the chat and the questions sections. So feel free to just type your questions there or send us a chat, and after this we are happy to just take those questions and answer the specific questions. So with this, let me begin with the first idea. And in fact, to give a little context on A/B testing ideas, I think all of these ideas are really the first guiding point where they give you the best practices. But to say that these ideas are going to work for everyone would be sort of an oxymoron, because we are talking about A/B testing them. So it's good to keep that in mind, that of course no amount of best practices can guarantee a success for your business. The whole point of A/B testing is to see what works on your websites and your pages, and that is the entire context. If you knew that a particular thing works really well, there would be no need for A/B testing. With that said, I genuinely feel that the topmost thing that you can do on your landing pages is to test your headlines. And the reason I say so is because if you see the image on your screens, it's a blurred image, and it's not because the image is not downloaded on your screens for now. It's really because that is what people, your visitors, see in first 5 seconds when they come on your website. So the first 5 seconds are really crucial where a visitor who's just come from a search page or a referral page or your social media presence, be it tweets on Facebook, they arrive on your landing pages and they just give you, say, couple of initial seconds, say first 5 seconds, to decide whether to spend additional time on your pages or not. And the first thing they really scan for is an easy to understand your headline. And by scanning for headline, what they are really trying to understand is to see whether they should commit further time on your pages or not. And this is the reason why landing pages typically have a high bounce rate, and why having a lower bounce rate is so elusive, because headlines is not something which is given a lot of focus. So my recommendation would be that if you have a PPC landing page, if you're driving paid traffic on your websites, go take a look at them and see what are the sorts of headlines that you have there. And in my experience, going with generic headlines do not really work. As an example, if you are selling pizzas online, you do not want to sort of have an headline that says "Welcome to Bob's Pizza." That's a very generic headline, and it doesn't really tell me what's sort of special about your pizzas. Why should I spend more time on your landing pages reading about your pizzas? Rather, you should have very concrete and crisp headlines such as "Pizzas delivered in Chicago area within 30 minutes." That tells me, yes, I'm in Chicago and they guarantee fast delivery of pizza, and I should spend more time on it. And to give you an example, with VWO, like I said, we work with so many customers, and regularly we keep coming up with landing pages. We keep coming up with case studies, and one of the case studies was really about a headline that made all the difference. So as you can see on your screen, this is one of the real case studies from an actual customer, where all the customer did was to add one word in the headline, but that made all the difference. So this is a customer who sell the supplements that give relief for joint pains and other sort of pains. And in this A/B test, what they did was to make it super clear that what they are selling is a supplement. As marketers and as product managers or as business owners, we naturally tend to understand our product really well. And as a consequence, what happens is that we assume that a lot of people would also magically understand that when we are talking about natural joint relief, it is obviously going to be a supplement. But that's not very obvious to a lot of visitors. And like in this case, they made it crystal clear that what they are selling is supplement, and it actually led to 89% increase in sales. Yeah, it sounds unbelievable, but it's a true case study. The second A/B test that I would recommend you to experiment with is positioning and flow of the content. So again, what you see on your screen is sort of a pattern called F pattern in the usability world. What F pattern really means is that visitor typically follow this F sort of a shape when they're evaluating a web page. So they'll go from top to bottom and from left to right. And what they're really doing when they're following this F pattern is they're scanning for relevance. They're scanning once your headline, say the first A/B test where you've captured their interest, you have convinced them that you should spend more than 5 seconds on the website. But the second thing that they really want to understand is whether what you are talking about is really convincing. So in the previous case where there was a screenshot that talked about, say, easy email subscriptions, that caught their interest. But now you really have to convince them that when you say easy, you mean that. And some of the mistakes that happen on landing pages is people try to convert very early on, even before the visitors are convinced. So you should try to use this gaze flow, and you should try to emulate the way visitors look at your pages to push convincing content at the right places. So, and one of the ways you can do this is to actually use heat maps or scroll maps. on your landing pages to see where is that your visitors are giving more attention. Maybe they're giving more attention in the middle part of your pages. But wherever that is, and the best practices say they follow the F pattern, that is where you should have the most relevant content. And again, I have an example and a case study for this. You can see on the screen, this is again one of our customers. They sell plants through a mail order. So if you write to them, they would send plants and they would ship plants to your homes and offices. So original page, you can see there was lots of text. And on a landing page, is having so much of text very early on is not advisable, because people are not yet committed that they need to spend more time understanding what you're offering. So what they did was to create a variation of the same page, and all they did was to add 2 bright images at the top, because that's where people would start scanning. And these pictures of images, this is very relevant to the visitors. And once they sort of are more committed, and it's also not really a hard science, you cannot really say that these 2 images did the job and 1 image would not have done the job. But that's the whole point of A/B testing, that you have to sort of come up with an hypothesis which would say that some additional content, which is in this case 2 images, would convince the visitors to spend more time, and it makes an emotional bond with the landing page. So the result of this A/B test was really an increased site engagement of more than 100%. So double the number of people started interacting with this page just because they added these 2 images in this on this landing page. And by the way, just to remind, if you have any questions or if you have any message, feel free to copy paste or type in on the GoToWebinar panel that you see. There's 2 sections called questions and chat. We'll take them up after we are done. The third A/B test that I would recommend after headlines and after experimenting with the gaze flow or the flow of content is really adding credibility with trust building elements. So there's a number of trust building elements that you can have, and this is the key sort of idea that your landing page has to appear trustworthy. You must imagine and you must put yourself in the visitor's shoes and see that on typically if you're driving traffic from PPC or advertising on AdWords or other places, and people really aren't aware of your product or service. So it's a very new thing for them once they are on your landing pages. Again, to reiterate, as product owners or as business owners, we tend to fall in love with our services, and we know ourselves best. So we think, yeah, I know, I've been in business for 5 years and I'm so committed to customer happiness. I'm all in for making our customers successful. But the visitors don't know that, right? The visitors are on the landing pages. For them, your website, your business, or your services as alien to them as anything else they come across on the web, which is a lot of things. So just adding a few trustworthy elements can at least lower the visitors' guards and really let them open to experimenting with whatever call to actions you have. So if you want them to sign up for a newsletter, or if you want to even download a trial, or just do an initial engagement with the page, just having some of the few trust builders can help you achieve that. And again, have a very relevant case study for this, where one of our customers called Bag Servant, they had 2 versions. In one of the versions, they were mentioning the Twitter followers. They assumed that this would sort of work as credibility builders, but they A/B tested against a banner that talked about. So the banner, it's not really visible on the slide, but what banner is saying that this bag or this website was chosen as one of the winners in the award ceremonies. And just having the simple trust building element where people understand that it has been vetted by an external agency, it led to a very good increase in the goals which in this case was visits to affiliate partners website, and it led to 72% increase in the visits, and product exploration increased by 60%, which is an amazing result just because they've just changed a simple thing on their landing page. The fourth A/B test, again, I would recommend. It's related to third A/B test. The third A/B test was about adding trust building elements, and the fourth one is little similar, but it has a more personal touch. So while trust building elements is more about badges or external authority, testimonials and real profiles is about having a real person on your landing page, or real voice giving credibility to your service. So I'm a big fan of Basecamp and their landing pages. I would recommend everyone to go and check their landing pages, not just the existing landing page, but if you Google around, you'll find their old landing pages images as well. And they do an incredibly good job at talking about how many companies have signed up for using Basecamp or people's experiences. And it's just basic psychology 101 that as humans, we like to look at other humans. Even a newborn baby would fixate his or her gaze at other humans. So I would highly recommend you to A/B test having a human face or having a real person talking about your product. But make sure you don't use stock images, of course. That's been overused, and people do not really appreciate stock images. And the grander or larger point of including testimonials or real profiles is really about your visitors want to know who else wants this product. They don't want to be a guinea pig. Like I said, once they are on your landing page with just arriving after clicking an PPC ad or an AdWords ad, they want to make sure that they're not the first ones to try out your product. They don't want to experiment. They don't want you to sort of experiment on them. So if you say that we've been used by 100 other customers, or here is a real example our customer is using, they again are very open to trying out your product. And again, I'll talk about one of the case studies. You see that this is again one of our customers on their landing pages. They tested a normal form where they asked for information. All they did was using VWO inserted this testimonial with a human photo, which talked about that it's a great place to study and school is set up for students. So it was an actual testimonial they put up right before the form, and this simple trick led to 50% increase in conversions, right? This is an amazingly simple A/B test that took them less than 10 minutes to try, but once they tried it, it was more number of leads for the amount of effort they put in. So it works really well, social proof. The last idea I'm going to talk about before I hand it over to Jake is including product screenshots and images. So again, going back to one of the case studies I was talking about, nobody really wants to read a lot of text unless it's for examinations, right? On your landing pages, you really want to communicate in a very visual manner. You don't want to give them 10 different bullet points where they just go through those bullet points and read it. Nobody has patience or time about that, especially if they're in a mode where they want to make a quick decision. So really wants to, so you should really experiment with including different product screenshots or images and sprinkled in a very nice way. You have to understand what is the gaze flow of your visitors or how your visitors are scanning your pages in the first glance. And if you place your images at those points, it's going to have a good impact on your conversion. Again, as an example of where it worked really well, this is again an example of one of our customers. They are a Dutch brokerage firm. What they did was simple. They replaced the existing contact information where they had email and telephone with simply an image or a photo of an employee where he was just having this sold sticker or for sale sticker right there. And if you look on the variation, that's one of the first or second things that catches your attention, and it makes me really interested in the product or the service versus the control where it comes much later. So this is, again, I would recommend as one of the A/B tests. Just see which images you can use on your landing pages and where you can put those images. So with that, I'll give it over to Jake. Jake, do you want to take it from here?
Perfect. All right, so I had a couple of test cases that I wanted to walk through with everybody today. Hopefully you find them helpful and easy to go and test yourselves and improve the results that you're seeing with your own marketing campaigns. There's a couple acronyms on this page that I'll use just a moment to describe. One is often used in the industry. It's called SKAG, or Single Keyword Ad Groups, and DKI is Dynamic Keyword Insertion. What we've found, and the concept here that we found has a very drastic improvement on any PPC campaign and the landing page performance, is to provide a consistent experience. Even if the experience is consistent and the content's not that great, but it's consistent, we found that the performance is better 80% of the time just by using that approach alone. So the great news for some of you that are on with us today that have no creativity, this is an excellent way for you to get some better results. Just by getting things consistent from keyword to ad copy to landing page messaging. And so what we've found is that most PPC strategy, over 50% that we audit, do not use this approach. Most of them are still using a generic approach where the keywords that they're bidding on, the ad copy that they're using, and the entry point to the site or landing page is not consistent. It's generic, keywords pointing to generic ads pointing to either a home page or a more generic landing page. And so I'll walk you through a quick case study that just kind of shows the difference between using the two approaches. On the next slide. So in using the SKAG approach, we pulled in results from over 200 accounts that we've leveraged that on. And you get kind of a compound effect that comes from that. The first one is, again, if someone's looking for a specific keyword, and in here we actually have kind of just a fun example. If someone's looking for frozen bananas, in the previous example you saw that someone just had a freezer-related ad and website. Or on this one you'll notice that the keyword that they typed in is now in the headline of the ad, and it's in the headline of the landing page as well. And so when we're talking about consistency, that's really it. When they see that, it really helps the user to know that they've found what they're looking for. The great part about that is it actually improves a lot of performance metrics as it relates to your PPC campaign. One, Google is looking for, in their quality score assignment, the experience that they're getting, both from the ad copy as well as the landing page. And so in using this approach, you're going to, one, improve your quality score, and what we've seen by an average of 38%. By improving your quality score, Google actually then starts to charge you less per click as a result of that. And so on average, we've seen an 18% decrease in cost per clicks as well in using this approach. And the great thing is from a conversion rate standpoint, we've seen a 67% on average increase just matching up keyword to ad to landing page headlines and messaging on the conversion rate alone. So some great wins that you get there. One thing that people have asked me in the past is how do you do that if you're bidding on a lot of keywords? And so there's solutions that exist that you can either be built into the functionality of your web page, or a lot of tools for testing also allow for dynamic keyword insertion. And so in the headlines of landing pages, rather than building 400 landing pages for all of your keywords, you can actually use dynamic keyword insertion and typically pass the key terms that you want in the headline through in the destination URL as a query string parameter. There's a lot of solutions out there that work well for this. Again, a lot of platforms have that built in natively, such as Unbounce and those things as well, to where you can use that, and you can, rather than testing 400 pages, you can make them dynamic and only have to test a couple and still keep that consistent approach from keyword to ad to landing page. Let's go ahead and jump into test number 7. And this one's actually incredibly simple, And for specific industries, it actually provides excellent results. Using dynamic keyword insertion to create consistent headlines is great. But if we can also make it location specific for certain types of industries, we've seen that we get an excellent lift to the conversion rate as well. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's, for service-related industries, and there's a number of those out there, it could be anything from plumbing or electrical or pest control or home security. A lot of people want to know that they're working with their local service provider. And so we use DKI in a number of test scenarios where we have, not only do we make the headlines consistent with the keywords that they were looking for, but based on the geographical targeting that we have in our campaigns, we're going to go ahead and also make sure that the location is specific to where they are. So in this particular scenario, you can see that we're targeting San Antonio and in Texas. Now, if I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and looking for the best barbecue in town, you can understand why that's going to create a big impact on the performance of these landing page tests. And so just in a straight comparison where we're not including geographical locations in the testing scenario and simply including the city and state in the content, we found that we got a 19% improvement to conversion rate just by including that alone. And again, what I would recommend there is because oftentimes with geographically targeted campaigns, you may end up with dozens or hundreds or even thousands of cities that you're targeting. Once again, we would recommend using dynamic keyword insertion that allows us to do that without necessarily having to build dozens or hundreds or thousands of landing pages, but that does that work dynamically for us and helps us get the benefit and not having to put in a lot of time and resources to accomplish that. All right, so the test number 8, and this is kind of a loaded question. So does a chat feature distract or does it contribute to the performance of your landing pages? And it's a question that we're asked on a very frequent basis, and it's one that I think we can provide some really good insight into today. So we've done some tests on a number of varieties, but it really all comes down to the timing of the chat and the questions that you're asking. What we've found is that in a lot of scenarios when a chat feature is simply available or it asks a generic question such as, how can we help, or those types of things, we've found a mixed bag of results. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of it depends on the industry, the products or services being offered. But we have found a couple little tricks that help a chat feature be very successful in most circumstances, and also what we've found is that when used correctly, we see an average improvement of a 31% conversion rate, 31% improvement to conversion rates. So what are some of those tricks? Well, the first thing that we've found is that in most situations, having a delayed timer on when that chat opens up and asks a question is important to not interrupting the experience until it's time to interrupt and help them take that next step. So on average, we've found that a 1-minute delay before having that chat window pop up is the most effective. The second element that we've found that helps improve the performance of the chat feature that you've got on your landing pages is to actually auto-prompt a question, not just have it generically ask, how can I help you today, but actually ask a question that's specific to them. And so it's a feature that we actually use heavily with a lot of our own campaigns and with our clients. So one example would be when someone comes to one of our landing pages, we might ask, what are your goals for AdWords this year? Or something that's related or specific to them that drove them to our site in the first place. And what we've found is that a lot of people have a couple of preliminary questions but weren't quite ready to pick up the phone and call or submit a form. But they did have a couple of questions that if we could just answer those for them, then they're then turning into leads. Quick questions that they need answered in order to help them feel comfortable taking that next step. That we highly recommend is including a chat feature on your site, delaying that chat popping up, and then also coming up with custom and engaging questions that help them feel like there's actually someone real on the other side. The great thing is someone doesn't have to be there, but the question can be auto-prompted, and if they respond, there's actually solutions where you can, it's either going to pop up to whoever's supporting and responding to those chats on your end, or if you're like a lot of our clients and you're just testing it out, you can actually set up to have those chats forward straight to your cell phone as if it were a text message and just respond right from there. And so there's some great ways to test it out without necessarily even having to hire anyone to see if that works for you, and making sure that you can have a quick response time on those as well. All right, so this is one that I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on today, is how to test effectively with phone numbers. And the crazy part is that using a phone number is oftentimes some of the lowest hanging fruit that we see in a test or in how we're measuring a test. 75% of the applicable accounts that we audit or onboard don't track phone calls, although phone calls are very important to their success, their sales, and just their business model in general. So what I want to walk you through is a couple of scenarios on ways that we can do that and the types of results that you can expect to see from that. So across 100 accounts that we've done this test with, there's a couple of things that we're looking for. One is, hey, well, we want to identify which landing page test was our winner, but what information are we basing that off of? Well, if phone calls can drive in revenue for our business, but we're not even tracking those or including that in how we're measuring the success of our campaigns or our landing page tests, then we're immediately looking at incorrect data and making decisions off of partial data, which is not a good way to be approaching things. It leaves gaps and can often lead to incorrect decisions. So the first thing that we're looking for here is we want to make sure that it's tracked so that we can simply ensure that we have the right data to make the decisions on what landing pages did best, what that produced for us in terms of leads or sales or phone calls or all of those things. So the first thing that we recommend setting up is just, hey, track your phone calls that are coming in. And believe it or not, most people are still not doing that. There's actually some great and free solutions that exist out there to track it. Back in the day, you would have to have a unique phone number for each campaign that you wanted to test. And then if you wanted to test and see how each keyword performed in a campaign, you'd have to have a unique phone number for each test, for each keyword. And that could get pretty complicated to manage, kind of expensive to buy and manage that many phone numbers, to record all of them and do it that way. So there's actually some great features that are now available that are free that allow you to do that, especially as it relates to PPC advertising. And one of those is simply, in Google AdWords, there are 2 ways for you to track your phone calls, and we recommend that if you're not doing it, you start here because it's free, and you can implement this in 20 minutes today if you want to. The first one is you can use call extensions in your ads themselves, and when you set up those call extensions in AdWords, you can actually use a forwarding number where it doesn't just point straight to your phone. It still will point to your phone number, but it goes through a Google forwarding number, and it tracks how many phone calls came from people calling from your ad specifically. The second one is there's actually a snippet of code that you can insert onto your landing pages that allows Google to replace the phone number on your landing pages and rotate through a dynamic phone number that allows us to track which campaign, ad groups, and keywords those phone calls came from. By setting those up, we can then very quickly go in and help measure the performance of our A/B tests by simply knowing how many phone calls did they drive, the duration of those phone calls, and if you want to record those, you can also determine the quality and then track that back down to the revenue that they provided. So this is something that, one, we recommend that you track correctly so that you can get the right information. The second thing is when you start tracking it, we've noticed that just the accuracy of the data improves 27%, which is a big deal in data accuracy, to make the best decisions anyway. The second impact that we've seen is that 50% of our clients, we end up changing the testing strategy that they thought they wanted to do because they didn't realize how phone calls were impacting their actual performance. And finally, we saw on average an 18% improvement to the aggregate form and lead, conversion rate, or the number of leads coming in. Not because this is in addition to we've got it tracked, but by using a strategy that focuses getting people on the phone that should be on the phone, or not, or getting them to drive through the form and keeping the focus and the testing strategy right, we found that we see an 18% improvement to lead volume coming in between the lead and the phone calls coming there. One other thing that I would just briefly mention on that before we move into the last test case scenario is that mobile is a big deal for doing this. There is actually a lot of businesses that are driven by phone calls. You'll actually want to make sure that your pages are geared towards those. And when people are on their mobile device and looking to really read less and consume less content, making that phone number big, right in the middle, and clickable to make it as easy as possible for people to call. Again, looking at like service-related industries, we've seen campaigns that were not viable or cost-effective or producing leads at a rate that would make sense. By using a good mobile strategy and tracking those phone calls, seeing campaigns be game changers for business and really drive a lot of cost-effective leads by using phone numbers effectively, especially on mobile. All right, and this is one that's near and dear to my heart. A lot of my background in my profession has been on the analytics side of things, not as much on the creative side of things with marketing. And so one thing that we've noticed is that too often we are focused on the wrong metrics that actually could be completely leading us in the wrong direction. And so there's a lot of text on this page, but I'm going to walk you through an example of a scenario that we found, and this information, we ended up making it, it is not specific from the client that we pulled this from, but it illustrates the point, and hopefully this provides you some insight that gives you an aha moment in how you're tracking the success of your campaigns. The point that we'll be reviewing here is determining the winner of your A/B tests on your landing pages. Should that be based on your conversion rate? That's actually a great metric to base it on, but what I'd like to review here is that's not the best metric to base it on. The best metric to base it on is the actual revenue and the profitable revenue that drove for your organization. So we've got some good, better, and best metrics that we can use to gauge the success of our A/B tests. If we can go back to the previous slide there. Good metrics to look at are, cost per click, quality score, those types of things to determine, hey, what are the best metrics to determine whether or not this campaign is performing best. As you can see here, we've got campaigns 1 through 5 listed out there. And a lot of the times what people will base the success of their campaign on, and this is kind of more of the fundamentals, is the cost per click that they're using to drive that in. The better metrics that other people that most of the industry is now transitioning to is conversion rate and the cost per conversion. And so what you can see here is that in using either of those metrics in the good or better, the campaign 5 would seem to be the clear winner. It's got the lowest cost per click, and it's got the lowest cost per conversion. So we would think, hey, is that our winner? And a lot of the times with the way that people are making their decisions off of their A/B testing strategies, that's what they're basing it off of. Hey, it's my lowest cost per conversion. That's a win. That's what we're going to go with moving forward. But when you look at the best category, and this is actually what we find to be the case for many of our accounts, is that, hey, you know what? Cost per lead is great, or cost per conversion, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't produce the right amount of revenue for you. And so in this scenario, when people are tracking from lead to actual closed revenue, and basing their optimization on that, you can see how quickly which campaign is your top performer changes for you. And so in this particular scenario, you can see that campaign 4 that we would have been really tempted to turn off because the cost per click was so high and the cost per conversion was so much higher, actually produced the most sales, had the lowest cost per sale, and produced by far the most revenue, especially in comparison to campaign 5 that we thought, hey, it was our lowest cost per lead, we ought to put more money there. This is something that we've found time and time again with a lot of the clients that we work with. And so one case study that I wanted to share with you is a tech support company that we were working with came to us and said, hey, we need more leads. We just want more leads. If you get us more leads, we can keep it under X amount of dollars per lead, then we want to grow as much as possible. And so because we're an opinionated group and we want to do things the right way, we said, well, we're going to challenge that idea. We don't want to necessarily get you more leads at that rate. We want to make sure we're getting you the leads that are turning into profitable sales for you. And so in connecting the dots and actually understanding which keywords drove actual sales for them, we were able to go in and increase their revenue by 14x in a pretty short amount of time while reducing their cost per lead. What we did is once we understood which keywords were actually revenue drivers, believe it or not, we actually found that most of their low-cost leads were actually low quality, causing their sales reps to churn through a lot of those leads in order to accomplish a sale, and that some of their slightly higher price leads were higher quality. And even though the lead cost more originally, their close rate on those was so much higher that the ultimate output, which was the revenue being produced in contrast to cost, was significantly better. And so we were able to turn off quite a number of campaigns that they thought were their best performing campaigns because they were producing cheap leads, but they weren't producing quality revenue. And by using that approach, we were able to, once again, see the revenue increase 14x and through efficiencies reduce their cost per lead by 38%. You can see that in the initial portion of this chart with the red line, when they said we just want more leads, the cost per lead just went up, and we hit into diminishing returns pretty quick. But when we started to focus on the right metrics, you can see that over time that cost per lead either stayed flat or started to decline while revenues increased by focusing on the right metrics. And so what we would suggest here, just as a final thought, is make sure that you're basing the results and the success of your test on the best metrics available to you. Basing that on revenue may not be something that you can move to as quickly as some of the other tests that we've suggested, but that's going to be best in class and really help you stand out from the competition and get the best return and ROI from your PPC tests.
Thank you, Jake. Just great lessons you shared. So, Jake, I think in this webinar we have about 15 to 20 minutes to take some questions. I already have a number of questions. I'll just talk about the questions. If they're relevant to you, I'll pass on to you. If they're relevant to me, I'll talk about it. So first of all, a big question, number of people asked whether this webinar is being recorded. Yes, it is. And we'll be happy to mail it to you, the slides and the whole webinar. So with that, let me just take more questions. And for any specific questions that we are not able to take, we'll try our best to follow up individually on email and answer those questions. So one question I have where Richard from Nairobi is asking, what's the primary KPI for A/B testing success when it comes to e-commerce optimization? So Richard, in my experience, the primary KPI which a lot of our e-commerce clients use is revenue per visitor. And the reason they use revenue per visitor is because it encapsulates both the conversion rate and also the amount of stuff particular visitor is buying in a session. So it captures a number of different metrics, and it also captures what quality of traffic you are driving on your landing pages. So if you have to consider one KPI, revenue per visit or revenue per visitor would be an interesting metric. And then Jacques asked what was the icon in the bag servant variation. So it was one of the case studies that I shared. So bag servant variation, the icon was really about an award in the particular industry where their bags were recognized as a game changer or as a very as a so it was a sort of an award in the bag industry, and that was what was the trust builder that this company is a recognized one and an old one. Jake, I think we have a question for you as well. So Richard is asking what is SKG and DKI in full. So maybe you want to reiterate that?
Yeah, so the SKAG or SKAG is going to be a single keyword ad group. And then the DKI is going to be dynamic keyword insertion. With the SKAG, as we call them, what that means is that we set up ad groups to only have individual keywords in those. And so the ratio that we're looking for in there is we don't put in more than about 3 to the most 5 keywords in an ad group with our paid search campaigns, so that we can very, very tightly correlate the keywords with the ad copy messaging. And so when we're referring to single keyword ad groups, a lot of the times what we would do is target the same keyword and then target that with an exact match, a phrase match, and a broad match modified in a single ad group and not include any other keywords. So again, just ensuring that the keywords and the ad copy are very tightly correlated. The dynamic keyword, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I thought you were
done. And then the dynamic keyword insertion is just something that is on these landing pages, is something that allows you to pull text based on the ad that they clicked in to manipulate the headline on the landing pages. Oftentimes this is done through query string parameters in the URL. And if you have some more specific questions about how to do that, depending on the platform that you're using, Paras or I can answer some questions on how specifically to do that.
Yeah, in fact, Jake, I have a follow-up question from Todd, who's asking, can VW build pages with DKI? So that, Todd, yes, definitely VW can build pages with DKI. There are two approaches on how you would customize a landing page according to what ad campaign you're running on AdWords. One of the approaches is to use a personalization campaign option you have in VW. So depending on your UTM campaign parameters, you can simply use the same landing page and modify different headlines or even different content so that it relates to whatever ad the user clicked on. So that is one approach. The second approach is to use the VW JavaScript API, and I'm sure there is, if you search the knowledge base, vwo.com/knowledge, you will find a way to do that in a very simple way. Or you can simply reach out to our support team and they'll be happy to help set up this particular campaign. But it's definitely possible. I have a question from Laura, who's asking, what's your opinion on including the navigation on a landing page? So my answer and my opinion, in fact, on it would be to not include a lot of navigation on the landing page. Maybe just one link that links back to your home page, but more navigation will dilute the main focus of the landing page. Jake, do you want to give a perspective on this?
Yeah, from my perspective, it kind of depends on the industry and the products or services being offered. But in the majority of scenarios, I'd agree with Paras on making sure that you limit the leaks that can occur, right? You want to kind of help them down a specific path or funnel. And so one thing that we've actually tested on a lot of our clients that works pretty well is that sometimes we will have navigation links at the top, but they're actually that just work to bring them down to a certain section of that same page that is conversion optimized and taking them down that path, which presents them with an experience that they're kind of used to seeing and feels like it gives them some control. We found that to be effective in some cases, but specifically in lead generation, we found that kind of avoiding having the navigation up in there it helps improve conversion rates enough that it's just not worth having it in there most of the time.
Okay. I have another question. In fact, the number of questions, we are just trying best to answer all of them. Another question is, how can I use localization if my product is an app? So I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but if the question is how do you use the localization on your landing pages, something that Jake talked about. Again, it's possible in a number of tools, including VWO. VWO option offers you geolocation of a visitor. So depending on whether the visitor is from a particular city or a region, you can simply dynamically modify your headlines or your content to show that specific location-oriented content. Jake, I have a question for you. Alexander is asking, under test 7, you mentioned DKI on web pages. Any suggestions for WordPress on this? So do you know any WordPress plugin that helps you do that?
You know, I don't recall which ones off the top of my head, but there are options available out there, and I know that ourselves and a number of our clients do use DKI on WordPress. I'm trying to recall if there's an actual plugin for that or if that's just something that they've had to code in. I am not sure off the top of my head.
Okay, and then someone is asking, Nathan actually is asking, live chat solution you recommend with delayed pop-up? Any particular tool suggestions that help you do live chat with delayed pop-up, something you talked about in your slides?
Yeah, so the chat that we use in almost all circumstances is OLARC.
Okay.
In the OLARC interface, you can go and choose the delay. You can actually A/B test the questions that it pops up and asks to see which one engages the users better. And so that's the tool that we've found to be it's simple, it's inexpensive. We actually found a way to integrate that with cell phones so that the chats can actually go to people's cell phones so they don't have to be at their desk to answer those chats. And it's very handy, very useful.
Right. And Jake, Simon and a number of other people are asking about some free call tracking solutions. I remember you talked about Google phone tracking, right? Anything else that you would recommend for phone tracking?
So as it relates to free phone tracking, and I probably have to put an asterisk in front of the word free on that, because if you're using Google AdWords, you're paying for it because you're paying money to use Google AdWords, right? But the feature is no additional charge in AdWords to use the call forwarding extensions on your ads or the rotating number on your landing pages. You're paying for it through your clicks, right, because you're paying a decent amount to run your campaigns through AdWords, but there's no additional cost for that. The other tool that we use that is a paid service is calltrackingmetrics.com is the one that we often use as well. And what we've found is that the pro to using Google, the Google forwarding numbers, is that it just integrates right into AdWords, provides you that information, and it's very helpful. But it's not rotating your number for campaigns outside of AdWords. And so we will use other solutions that exist out there. There's really quite a plethora of them, but they're all paid solutions outside of that. But it gives you additional flexibility outside of tracking phone calls that came from your AdWords campaign, which can be a great benefit to your organization as well.
Okay. Royale is asking, are there any books that you recommend with A/B test or case studies? So Royale, on the VW website, we have probably more than 100 case studies for you to learn from. If you just go to vw.com/resources, you'll find a number of good case studies. And of course, there's a number of very interesting blogs all over, including Jake, who contributes at a number of places. So Jake, do you have any recommendations where people can learn more about A/B testing case studies?
Yeah, there's no books that come to top of mind, but I would just follow the right groups. I mean, I would follow a Visual Website Optimizer, I would follow Unbounce, I'd follow Site Tuners, people that are in the industry actively doing tests and sharing case studies to give you the most relevant information. That's what I do, and that's what I found to be the most helpful.
Right. So Pavlo is asking to repeat the KPI for e-commerce. So Pavlo, I was talking about revenue per visitor. So it's a KPI that encapsulates if you get 1,000 visitors on your website, out of like if 10 purchase something and 10 also purchase say $100 worth of products in aggregate, your revenue per visitor would really be 10 cents. So tracking revenue per visitor is a good metric that I found that encapsulates a number of different things. So Jake, do you have any suggestions for e-commerce people on the KPIs they should use?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. What I like about your approach, Paras, is that it allows us to normalize the data and really understand what the traffic is worth to us. And I think that's the best way to be looking at it at an aggregate and seeing how things are performing. The other thing you can look at is average order size by the source to see if some sources are also contributing to higher order values. Because that's something that could indicate that a campaign that is either more profitable or you might be able to invest more marketing dollars into because the average order value is higher. The other thing that's interesting to look at, and you can really go down quite a deep rabbit hole as it relates to measuring e-commerce, but a good place to spend some time focusing is the fallout that exists in your checkout process. If you're finding that some campaigns have a lower revenue per visitor, or have, you're seeing some of those, it's good to go and do a funnel analysis to see if certain traffic sources are abandoning at a higher rate versus other or specific products to go and fix, leaks that might exist that are costing you revenue.
Right. Saqib is asking, can you also include view-through conversions for displays? How should they be attributed? So I'm not sure if I understand view-through conversions per se. Jake, is that a particular AdWords terminology?
Yeah, so a view-through is when someone sees your display ad or your banner ad, does not click on it, but then comes back to the site and converts. And so view-throughs I kind of look at as assists, and you kind of have to look at those with a grain of salt because view-throughs are great to know that people are seeing your banner ads. You didn't have to pay for the click, and then they came back to the site and happened to convert. Again, it's something that's useful and helpful to see there, but it's not. I wouldn't view that as good as an actual conversion from the campaign that it came from. But I would look at it as an assist, and it's certainly helpful information to see there, especially if you find that there's certain products that you can be effective at using there. That's the metric that a lot of the times we would recommend using for your retargeting campaigns is, what type of view-through conversion rate are you getting there to show how effective your retargeting campaigns are at driving people back to complete purchases. And combining those with actual conversions and then looking how many additional view-through conversions came as well to get a better picture of what's going on with the performance.
Right. On the question of which websites to follow for A/B testing case studies, Steve and a couple of other people mentioned whichtest1.com. I think it's an amazing website, and they have a huge repository of case studies. So if you go to whichtest1.com, it's a very interesting website. Again, Bas has asked, have you seen A/B tests that use customer lifetime value as a primary metric? I think it's a really interesting question because not a lot of organizations optimize for customer lifetime value, and a lot of them have very immediate conversion goals such as lead gen or sign up or something else as a primary goal. I can tell you from our example at VWO, whenever we run an A/B test on one of our landing pages, be it a home page or be it a specific landing page for AdWords, we try to optimize it for paid signups. So we not just measure these engagement and not just we measure the free trial sign-up rate, which is what is present on the landing page, but we measure the ultimate upgrades as well, which happen further down the lane, say within the next 30 days. But of course, measuring customer lifetime would mean that you would have to run A/B tests for a very long period. And if your customer lifetime value is correlated to a specific metric, say number of logins they do in first 7 days or the engagement they have, I would recommend optimizing for those immediate metrics so that you can end your A/B test faster. But this is an interesting question. Jake, have you seen anyone of your clients optimizing for lifetime value?
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head. I think lifetime value is more of a lagging indicator, and if you wait to make optimizations and you understand lifetime value, then you're waiting too long to adjust your tests. But I would say about 20% of our clients do measure the lifetime value and use that as a metric that they're optimizing their campaigns on. But it's something that it's usually an analysis that's done after the tests are done. But a lot of the times we have to use leading indicators such as some of the things that you were mentioning, the leads, the quality of those leads as scored in their CRM or those types of things. Did they sign up for a free trial? Did they then upgrade to a paid membership? Those types of things. I think you just have to optimize on the right metric at the right time, and especially for businesses where you don't, the sales cycle can be very long. It can be tricky to optimize off of that because you don't know until too far down the road. So, but we do have some clients where they're closing down their leads, within a week or within 3 days, and so actually basing it off of actual revenue and lifetime values does make sense to them, and so it just kind of depends on the circumstances.
Right. So that's all. I think we're almost, in fact, we're 1 minute over our 1 hour limit. So thanks everyone for joining. It's been lovely having all of you. Many interesting questions. To reiterate, we have recorded the webinar and we'll share it with everyone. And if you missed any specific question, I'll make sure me and Jake follow up with you on those specific questions. And if you have any specific questions for us, feel free to tweet us. Our handles are on the screen, or you can go to our websites and just shoot a mail to us directly. Thank you. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.